Welcome to Leadership Luminaries Lounge with Kerry and Peggy O'Neill, a podcast about the connection of leadership, philosophy, practice, and impact on society. Get ready to be illuminated.
Well, welcome back to part two of our conversation with Lawrence Bass. And this is part of our African American History Month celebration. And in particular, we're talking about contemporary role models, of which I consider my brother Lawrence to be, of the first African Americans to XXX, whatever that is. And his choices of how to deal with that and how that's impacted his life. And Peggy brought up in the end of the last conversation a really good point about being liked. And so, why don't we start again? Peggy, why don't you start a little bit about that story about the need for being liked, and give Lawrence a chance to respond to that again, too.
Yeah, so talking about my story. Anyway, years
Yeah.
ago, I had a mentor that I was concerned people weren't liking me. So I went up to him and I said, well, I don't think some of these people like me. And he was very clear about that the reason they don't like me has nothing to do with me. Number one, it's whatever they like or don't like. But then number two, that if I'm seeking to be liked by everybody, then eventually there's going to be somebody that won't even like that. I mean, they won't like me because I want to be liked. And so it's about, so what I finally realized is that, oh yeah, everybody's not going to like me. And rather than focusing to look at um, uh, my feelings or what I think about myself have something to do with whether they like me or not, to not let that influence how I saw myself and my own worthiness and so on. So Lawrence had some other things to add on to that I think can be useful for us as especially people that want to be leaders in organizations, leaders in their lives, leaders in the community, how that can actually, I think we also in the break use the word like it can disable us, or it can really get in our way of being the success and the leader that we really want to be. So I'd love to hear you elaborate on that some more, Lawrence.
So I was mentioning that in order to be the first of and to excel and to lead, that requires that you be able to shelter and convince, cajole, do all these other things. And you will be the point to gather all of the negativity, all of the resistance to what you're trying to bring about will be focused at you or near you. And to the extent that you are vulnerable, it impedes your ability to move your group ensemble towards the goal. So let's say that you, as part of your psyche, you need the approval of all the engagements that you encounter. And as Peggy just said, it's unlikely that you will get the approval of all of them. So you have to be at least functional enough to get enough for you and be willing to let go of the all for the greater good of moving ensemble your group towards your mission. In some cases, it may require that, for me at least, being on the point on first of many of these things, I had to be perfectly able to withstand all of the scrutiny because you're the first one. You're the only one. You're the only thing that all of it can examine, probe, chip at, smack at, go at. So you have to be able to withstand all of this. So that training regimen put me into that part of my natural response is that I said that being insular may have been and was very useful to me. There wasn't anything you could say about me that had any negative effect. If I heard it, I discounted it, I ignored it, pushed it over. I'm going after objective. And if the objective is on the other side of you, I may have to go through you. And you declared war, so you unfortunately you're about to become a casualty. Here we go. But that type of harshness is not the best process in non-adversarial situations.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, too much being on the battlefield results in what is now known as, post
Post-traumatic stress.
PTSD. So those of us who were first have some modicum of PTSD that erases over time. But the longer you are subjected to the that harsh environment, and if you are really intense environment, as in the one, and all of it comes to you, uh, PTSD can be ingrained, and you either suffer from it or you absorb it into your psyche, extract the energy from it, and use that in other forms. It's no longer damaging. It's just part of the history. It's part of your formation story. And some have formation stories of it was nice and wonderful as they were coming to be, and others have they came through fire and brimstone, but we're both here. So stories are different. And the important thing is that you learn how to face adversity of whatever type, extract the energy from it that is useful for you, and reflect it back as part of your shield to lessen the power of what's coming at you.
Yeah. That was one of the things I wanted to kind of point out also, and you mentioned it before too, is that being the first of often puts you in a insular position that you're unique from everybody. I remember during that time that at church, and the only place that you could really be, and even then, because of our family, just being the nature of the way it is, you could actually be you, but you could kind of let your guard down, was at home amongst just the nuclear family, because otherwise you were carrying the weight of the race, the weight of the city, the weight of the school systems, the weight of everything.
Ancestors, all the ancestors,
Yes.
all of it.
And so to not succeed or to fail meant that,
Fail?
well, that was it. Yeah, failure was
Fail?
not an option. But the contemplating the consequences of that meant that not only was it just a failure for you, but it was a failure for everybody and all those people that put their hopes on you. And even though, and one of the things I kind of thought it was interesting, and I'll share, and my wife, and I think it's kind of like our generation, that a lot of us, that we are pretty insular, in that if you performed academically or something, those natures, then you were not necessarily a member of even of your own community, because you were something else. They recognized you, they owned your success, but you were not necessarily part of them. And so, as a consequence, you needed to, as a protection mechanism and as a way to survive and to excel, is you really had to learn how to not care pretty much what most people thought.
You had to distill the things that were critical, and there were some things that were important, and there's pretty much nothing else after that, because that was all consuming. Everything else had to be consumed to run those two levels of, you must deliver the critical. You really have to deliver, the important. And if you pull those two off, okay, I don't care about the rest of it. Whether they like it and how they think about it, I'm just too tired, because here comes the next critical.
How would you? I mean, both of your stories are incredible, and and what would be some lessons learned or to share with this generation, the next generation that isn't going through that? Now, every generation has their own challenges, whatever kind, and and there may be some firsts that we can't even imagine now for people. But how would you extrapolate that out? Because so maybe even though I'm sorry, what came to me is that the next generation, maybe like you paved the way, but all of a sudden it came to me like, well, maybe you really didn't. Maybe you paved a way, but it didn't really pave the way. And so maybe the next generation is still similar to your generation for whatever reasons. Anyway, so I'll let you sort through that and say, but what would you share with the next leaders, with the leaders that are there now? What can they learn from you, or what advice? I know that's not the best word, but more like so, yeah, just what did you learn? What lessons did you learn that you think other people could learn from? There we go.
Okay, I have a confirmation for successors. Um, what I did was not unique. It was first in that time only. It was not the first ever by a long shot. It is not the first forever, because you are going to be first. And then your successors are going to be first. It is the nature of humankind that we spawn the next who are first, because humanity is progressing, and each progression requires first. So I had no idea that I was going to do this. I have nothing in me, memory otherwise, that would suggest that I could have done this. I didn't know that I could do it until I was doing it. And then once I was doing it, I felt comfortable doing it. And then I did more, and then I got addicted to it. So now it seems to become a pattern. So looking back, our parents did similar. And like I said, we had an uncle that did the first kidney transplant. I mean, a great uncle who did the first kidney transplant. First. He was the first. So this whole thing of first is not a thing. What we have done may look large in our context, but in future contexts, it will be looked at just like we look at the ancestors who, oh yeah, there were a whole long line of. So we are just the current iteration. We're looking at successor generations who are becoming and are quietly doing their first. So just like I tried my best to not become notable, because notoriety requires energy as you're projecting a persona and people want to know. And one of the consequences of my passage was I tend not to tell you much. And as Kerry would tell you, I declined efforts to be on this cast. How many times, Kerry?
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've asked you.
So
I was shocked
I'm
that you said yes. I think Paula must have been wearing you down.
well, Paula and Courtney.
Yeah.
It took both of them. So I'm inclined not to tell. So there are probably untold firsts happening right this moment. So I don't want to give advice. I want to give commendations and confirmations that yes, it is sometimes hard. Yes, it is sometimes cruel. Yes, can be sometimes all encompassing. Yes, it can be injurious, but also, yes, it is really hellaciously rewarding. And also, uh, it is what was demanded of you as a human. Each of us are endowed with something. And the accountability is that you did all that was necessary for you to deliver that which you were put here to deliver. And yes, you don't just drive the truck and park and someone unloads it. That's not how that works. So you should expect trials, tribulations, probably for a long time, probably some of them forever. Uh, but you do what you know inside of you, what you have. Deliver what you have. The rewards are present as you are doing them. So it's not like your reward is in heaven. No, you'll start enjoying the heck out of this the moment you are on point doing what you're supposed to do. You will know and you will love it.
Mm.
I I think that, that was really key, is to understand that the success gets to be its own reward, and it's a self-reinforcing system. And after a while, you really don't need anybody else, because you've already you did it. And so you already get that internalized feeling. There's a couple of things, Lawrence, I wanted you to share about in some conversations that you and I have had. One is about leveraging the resources, and this is something that mom and dad taught us: do the best you can with what you got. But what is available today is significantly more useful, and there's many, many more resources that people that are generally considered underprivileged, inner city, minority, or whatever, that they can leverage, that no one can take away from you. Once you achieve and once you gather that knowledge, it can't be taken away. The other thing is, you mentioned our great uncle. The We consider ourselves, I don't know, I have probably put African American, Black on my racial identity for a number of decades, but in reality, we are multiracial. And one of the conversations that you and I have had often, that kind of the first time you said it, has struck me, which a lot of times the conversations that you do, is that we are probably the last of the Black men. And in our particular family, our grandchildren are multiracial. They don't even think that way. And so unless our nieces do something different, the next generation of the Bass family will not be Black or white. They will be something different. So if you could talk a bit about that.
As I understand it, this whole thing of race was an artificial construct that has taken an extraordinary amount of time for us to grow beyond. We are human. And I think naturally, as we're seeing it happen in our families, we think it's blending, but we're finally being stripped of the veneer and this whole thing of race, which was never a thing. One of the things that you and I have talked about is that, when this, what they call artificial intelligence, but right now it's just machine learning. But when general artificial intelligence comes on, there will actually be a different species on the planet. Right now, we're the apex, so we think, species on the planet. That one probably will be the apex species because it will know everything that we know, but each of us knows something, but none of us knows all of it. That one, general intelligence, will know all of what each one of us knows. That kind of makes it superior. So, in much like what we do with insects and cattle and other things, we just have at them. Kill them, eat them. We do all kinds of weird things, some people would say. So, what would happen if there were another species on the planet that saw us in that way? Would we see us as Black Americans, white Americans, Asians, or would we, for the sake of, we better gang together or this thing is just going to take us out a few at a time? And I'm thinking that in every instance of history, of human history, when under duress, enemies coalesce, because the enemy of my enemy is most likely my friend. So I think we're approaching an era that, irrespective of what we thought about our petty divisions, we may come to the understanding of that division thing. That's wasting our time. I need you to be tightly close to me, and I don't care about any of those other things. I need you tightly close to me so that I stand a chance to survive. And hopefully the two of us will survive, as opposed to each of us singly not.
That was a lesson. You didn't play football, but we were in band. But football in Kentucky was a lot like being in the military or war. It was war every week, as a matter of fact. And so,
and it's just short of religion.
Exactly. But we blended racially. Matter of fact, that one of the stories we were telling before we came on is that we were very close to, as close as others, to the superintendent of schools system's children. I played football with his one of his sons, and his daughter and my cousin were great friends, and then we were in the same grade level, different races or whatever, and so we were very closely matched together. But one of the things that football and traveling to foreign countries as groups of Americans teaches you is that once you leave the border or once you go away, you are now part of another tribe. And it ain't got nothing to do with skin color or nothing like that. Because like when you go to Madisonville to play, they hate everybody from Paducah. They don't care what you look like. When you go to China, you're an American. And there's, they got some black ones, they got some white ones, they got some other ones, but you're an American. And if you want to get along, you probably need to know some other Americans.
Well, I lived in Singapore and for a while, and was in Malaysia and India, and so I know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then I did some training in Russia too. And when one time during a break in the training, and some of the volunteers that were there to help told me that there were two races in the room. I'm like, two races in the room, because they were all white to me. But in Russia, those were two different races that hated each other. I'm like, totally blind to this, because of course in this country race is more about color or whatever. But I hear you, Lawrence, and yeah, that this race thing, somebody arbitrarily invented it at some point, and it's been taken on for years and years and years.
Yeah, it's lasted abnormally long, and as many things that last beyond their time, a superior issue arises and sweeps it aside. So as we're facing global, climate change, we weren't around when the planet was as hot as it's about to get. And the reason we weren't around, we couldn't survive then. And then there was a time even before that, with larger creatures, dinosaurs and the like, we weren't around because we would have been food. So we need to be mindful of the context of things. So sometimes the divisions that we labor under and deny ourselves the ability of calm, peace, fun, rest, camaraderie, which only exist for moments throughout our history. And if you look over the arc of the planet, since we've only been here for a blip, those things, camaraderie and the rest, you weren't here. So there's no such thing as camaraderie. We are not taking advantage of this, all because of some logical construct, and it doesn't seem to be useful, especially now in light of the fact that the planet underneath us is changing, and we're discovering that, maybe this is not the panacea or the paradise we thought it was, and then it's actually kind of turning hostile to us. Yeah. So maybe you should enjoy the hell out of it while you can.
Peggy, do you have another question?
No, I think that's fantastic. Let's enjoy the hell of it while we can. Let's put all this division stuff aside and just say, hey, let's enjoy each other. It's amazing to me that we're not living that way. It's just amazing to me.
So over the arc of my life, I was taught the lesson, and I didn't have words to describe what I was doing. But over the whole arc of my life, I've been doing the following: enjoy where you are when you're there, because all too soon you have to go. The situation is going to change. The people are going to change. You are going to change. So if you like the way you are now, enjoy it, because you're going to get older. And things that you used to do, you can't do anymore. So you better have done them while you could and enjoy that moment. Like I'm enjoying this moment intensely.
Absolutely.
Right. Good.
There was one piece that I want to do, and then we've had a great conversation, and you and I will continue to have more, Lord willing, until one of us gets taken away. And Peggy, you're welcome to join in more of those if you'd like to. But you and I have had a lot of conversations about overcoming hardships and adversity, particularly in the realms of education. And one of the things that you did is you mastered education from your own personal perspective and achieved a great success for that. And then you and your family went back and started to help others. And you and I have had a lot of conversations about not waiting for someone to create a program to help lift up those that are in need of some assistance or in need of being at a different level than where they are. Can you talk a minute about taking advantage of the resources, and maybe even just mention a few of some of those resources that you talked about for individuals and families to overcome the educational adversities that are getting in the way, that DEI and affirmative action and those other programs won't necessarily be available through government or other means to address?
Education is part of a misnomer now. There's learning, there's content absorption, there's socialization, and well, there was one other major thing that happens under the guise of education. Talk about socialization. This is something that humans do as they interact with each other. They figure out how to do this nicely. One of the biggest places that socialization happens is in the church. So let's kind of figure out how we can offload the socialization requirement out of the school. And where is the biggest place that socialization happens? In the family. So that ability to make sure that your child or those in your charge are correctly socialized is largely in your power. You've been delegating it, but you may now have to become responsible and engage. And once you engage, the miraculous thing is you become aware that just what you need just happened to be laying beside you. And then you said, wow, when did that appear? No, it was actually always there. You weren't aware of it. But let's say you've got a high performing child. And when I was in the classroom, I discovered that pretty much all of those students were geniuses. They didn't know it at the time. And I recognized it kind of earlier and earlier than some of the parents. And so I started demanding excellence out of them. And you ask it, they do it. Or, well, actually, if you demand it, they do it. So we're going to enter a time in which we cannot delegate some things that we're going to have to take on. And just like Dad said, you're going to do straight A's, I'm going to whoop your butt. Okay, he set an expectation, high expectation, and I did it, leapt over it, got addicted to it, drove myself. So in areas that are bereft of resources, one of the things that they cannot take away from you is the demand for high performance, high self-expectations. And children are not born with high self-expectations. That is either enforced on them or some combination of delivering a framework for them. And then as they move in the framework, they assimilate the framework and they start to drive themselves. And your involvement is less needed and eventually not needed at all. And like I said, eventually Dad said, boy, sometimes you could throttle back. And I said, huh? What? No, no. So eventually, all all of us get framework, scaffold, nudged in the beginning until that which is in all of us takes over. And then everything else needs to back away and let us morph in the shapes that we need, make the turns that we need, because not all of us are going to develop exactly the same. And much of the education process is a process. And another one of the things the students taught me is each of us has a process. So looking for a school system where you're going to deliver your child that's going to do the same thing for all 40 of them in the class, which is 20 too many. No, I want my child to get this. And well, we don't have the energy, experience, time, resource, or whatever to do your child. Who is the expert on your child? You. In answer to your point, how do you find resources? Knowledge is the knowledge. They're not hiding the knowledge. Even the taking away of, DEI, all this structure stuff around us, they're doing it in the open, in your face, so to speak. So there's nothing covert about it, including where are the resources that they were trying to deny you? Well, they're actually still lying there, just trying to convince you, don't go touch it. Mm-hmm. But they're still there because it would take a great effort to go harvest that back in. So for some period of time, they can't go out and reharvest all of this. It's still there. I don't necessarily want to push one thing, but Khan Academy, Sal Khan did something wonderful for education. He took a large amount of the content, put it into digestible chunks, and posted into a public forum that if you want to go read about a major work of art or a piece of literature or quantum mechanics or interdimensional, or black holes or dark energy, it's all there, a complete compendium of this. This is accessible to everyone. So part of what I do when I engage people who think that they're in a situation that they can't be delivered to their child, I said, have you looked at Khan Academy? And they looked at me, oh, what? And I explained to them and I said, do you have internet access? Oh yeah, it's right here on my phone. I do TikTok. I said, so how about if you also put this thing on there and instead of letting your kid play TikTok, have them do one of these and you join them too and have them explain to you what they have now learned and why they think this works. So instead of you delegating someone else to do this to your child, you are going to be present as they morph themselves. This I find to be really effective. Of the last 12 people that I've done this to, 11 of them have told me that their children have become self-ignited and they're doing it on their own. And that the kids now are talking about things and doing things that they have no idea and can't explain. Such is the desire in the children that if you give them exposure and any way out, they will go. Mm-hmm. So I have great hope that it seems that one of the requirements is electricity, internet access, and knowledge of where the pieces may be found and how to scaffold it that you don't consume a large tome of information before you get the little snippets that lead you to the ability to take on a tome. So once you have that type of approach path and access to all the knowledge is there, and it can't be erased, it can't be taken. And besides, the AI is, trying to hoard and trying to build the body and unearth all of it for its sake, which means that we can find and use this too. So this is how I think in the interim, we can approach this. That doesn't speak to socialization, doesn't speak to delivering nutrition. It doesn't speak to any of those other compounding, overlapping, and internested issues that interfere with learning. But at least for the learning part, we have an answer for this.
Mm-hmm.
I confess, I am not one to be able to fathom out how do you deliver nutrition efficiently, socialization, equitability, and correctly, because as we know, if you socialize a young human in the wrong fashion, bad things can happen. So this socialization thing is highly important, must be done correctly, and the timing is ticklish. That's beyond me. I have no words for this. Uh, I don't want to confess that I think it's magical that it happens, but I think it's magical. But the rest of the stuff, content and other, we can do this. And stripping that away makes it look like, oh, if we can strip this away, then how about if we strip away nutrition? And if we strip those two away, now how about if we strip away housing? And if we strip those things away, heck, the only thing left now is socialization. We can take on any one of these at a time. And right now, content delivery is well within our ability to take that one out.
You know,
and
I
simplify the problem.
I like the way you put that. And, one of the things that I try not to get too upset by listening to the negative news and that sort of thing. But one of the issues that correlates also with the retrenchment away from DEI was the teaching of African American history and the contributions of African Americans to society. And so I got to thinking about that. There's nothing that can prevent that. And for instance, this conversation that you and I are having, and Peggy, is now in the internet, and forever and ever it will be in the ether. And so somebody somewhere will be able to find this. And so regardless of whether it's taught in schools or not, the fact is that we've done what we've done. That's why actually we do this Leadership Luminaries Lounge podcast, is that part of it is because we kind of do it as a business development thing. But I think the piece that goes beyond that is we just enjoy having these conversations, and we enjoy sharing what we have found out with others, and there's nothing they can do about it. So,
well, just as a case in point, this is what was done in history. Remember, a lot of history was oral, and this is like you're sitting with the griots, and the griots are, talking amongst themselves. It just so happened that there's a scribe nearby, and it wrote down what these griots were talking about, and that's what actually is much of recorded history.
Yeah.
That some council, I don't know, that's bad nomenclature. A group of elders were talking about what happened to them, what they did, and there happened to be a scribe there that wrote it down, and that was now what we called history.
Well, Peggy, did you have another question, another conversation? Because I'm afraid that if we don't shut this off, we'll need 3 episodes. So. But well, anyway,
I am enjoying this immensely. I feel a burden lifted off of me because I shouldn't be here, shouldn't know you, shouldn't be exposed like this, shouldn't have had the passage I had. There were 2 high school teachers who saw things I didn't see, and they suggested I do things, and one of them told me I was going to be an engineer and I was going to go to MIT, and he said, don't worry about it, just do what I tell you, it's going to work out. Wow, it worked out. But what was required is that I did what he told me, which was a consequence of the conditioning that my parents put me into, that when an elder tells you to do something, you did it. And you always perform to the best of your ability. And that was the necessary framework that they set up, that I was receptive and ready for the instruction that these angels departed on me. And then I was standing at the right place when the lightning bolt hit, and voila, here I am. So I feel blessed in this, but the consequence of being blessed is that you feel a responsibility to pass on as much of a blessing as you can. And I want to thank you guys, because one of the reasons why I flunked retirement and went to teach was because I felt, boy, you've been blessed. You better, tick, 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 tick. You better get on with delivering blessing. And I hope that this is useful to some number of people. Actually, I hope it's useful to many, that they can parse out pieces and whatever that they find useful at the moment. So thank you for a forum that I can,
Oh, wow.
I had started doing one more good.
That's good. Well, Lawrence is not like most of our guests. He does do consulting, but only for a very limited group of people, and he generally selects those very carefully. You can see him on. I don't know. Do you have a LinkedIn profile?
It's there, but it's very old.
I was going to say.
I carry a very low profile.
I was going to say he's very intentionally very, as he mentioned, not very out there and promoting himself. However, if you have a idea and you would like to talk to him some way or another, you're welcome to talk to me or Peggy, and we'd be happy to get back in touch with him. And then again, we hope that you have been blessed by this opportunity to learn more about us and what we have learned along the way. Peggy, any closing thoughts?
It's just been a wonderful experience to be with both of you, and your energy and your history and all that you've learned. And so I'm grateful for today myself.
Well, until next time, then, let your light shine. Thanks for being with us.
In the Leadership Luminaries Lounge, we sit and chat with Peggy and Kerry, where wisdom's at. They sprinkle insights like morning dew in this lounge where knowledge blooms anew. With every episode, they set the stage, sharing golden nuggets, turning life's next page. From boardroom tales to dreams out loud, they uplift a thought and make you proud. Oh, swing and sway with Peggy and Kerry in the lounge where visions are merry. Take a seat, let your worries retreat in the Luminaries Lounge where leaders meet.